Hello? Am I too loud? Oh, you need a loud person to get your attention. So let me turn it down to breathe. Okay. Nice to see you all. May I invite those at the back to come to the front? There's a whole table here available for you. Those at the back. Of course, we're expecting more people to come to join us. Okay. Great. So let's get started. This is the moment that we have all been waiting for. Have you been waiting for this day? How many of us were in India, New Delhi, 2 years ago? Okay, just about a quarter of us. So welcome to the new kids on the block. Well, I know you're big babies. Anyway, let's get started. Director General Advocate Mikateko Maluleke, Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, who is also host of the Empowerment of Women Working Group under G20, South Africa's presidency, our host and co-organizer of the Gender in Food, Land and Water Systems Conference. We have the Western Cape Government, Department of Agriculture, HOD Dr. Mohale Sebopetsa, Deputy Director General, Department of Agriculture, Mr. Daryl Jacobs, and representatives from Western Cape Government, Department of Agriculture, CGIAR Leadership, Dr. Ismahan Elufi, and Integrated Partnership Board Member, Mr. Desigen Naidu, distinguished participants from guest countries, and our host country, South Africa, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Hello, Molweni, Huemora. I'm doing well, encourage me. I did practice. Salam alaikum. Welcome to the motherland and to the Accelerating Equality in Food, Land and Water Systems Conference 2025. We are so glad you could make it, and welcome to our online participants who are streaming via YouTube. Last time we did Converge in India, that was in 2023. Coincidentally, India had the G20 presidency. So, can someone guess where we are going in the next 2 years? Well, anyway, my name is Vivian Atakos. I will be your host and moderator for the opening plenary. This high-level opening plenary will set the stage for this conference, the 2025 Gender in Food, Land and Water Systems Conference. Working closely with distinguished speakers, panelists, we will frame the urgency, we will look at the opportunities and collective responsibility in accelerating equality and social inclusion across food, land, and water systems. So as we move on, I want us to take stock of who is in the room. Do you have your smartphones? Let's go to Menti. Menti.com. We have the QR code on the screen. Otherwise, you can also go to menti.com, www.menti.com, and use the code 11136629. In India, we welcomed almost participants from 70 countries. Let's see how many of us are here today. Great. United States. How many are here? That's bold. Well, Canada, South Africa, Rwanda. South Africa, good. That's popping out nicely. Germany, India, Rwanda, Morocco, I see just about 50, how many responses? About half of us in the room. Italy, Pakistan, Chile, someone has 3 countries. I see Ghana, good. Sri Lanka, Bahrain, great. Welcome to the motherland. Let's move on to question 2. What are your expectations for these 3 days? Can we move on to question 2? Okay, the slide is loaded. Do you see the question on your phones? Okay. Looks like, they keep on saying that Cape Town has four different weathers in a day. So the screen has just frozen. It was hot, now it's cold. Okay, there we are. What are you looking forward to in this conference? Let's get your perspectives, and we do hope that we will meet them. Learning, networking, collaboration, new insights. You are at the right place. Most of us are researchers. Collaboration. Okay, the Menti is on. We'll take stock of it later. But allow me to take us to the next segment, where we are going to have a traditional welcome. And I'd like to invite Mr. Tariq Jenkins on stage to take us through this welcome ceremony. Let's encourage him.
Good morning, everybody. Can everyone say, "Kaing Kwas"? This is Koikohoab for good morning. And when you have lunch today, if everyone can say "Kai Ches," which means good day. And when you have supper, if you wouldn't mind saying "Kaing Kwes," that means good evening. So the ceremony that we are going to speak about is a short cleansing prayer. It's part of all the Ngao ceremonies that are conducted by San and Khoi communities. And typically it would be in the burning of mpepo or sage in a shell. And I've actually done the burning outside of the building so as not to trigger the smoking alarms here. But what I'll do is I'll just take us through some of the processes of the language that is being used and the significance of this particular kind of ceremony. So this is a prayer in Koikohuab. And as I mentioned, it is one that you would find in a number of the cleansing ceremonies that are being undertaken across the Western Cape, across this country and in Southern Africa. And with it comes a song which I'd like you all to repeat after me. And we'll first go through the words, and then we'll sing it together, and then I'll do the prayer. Okay, so. Gangansi, Kot Atsi, Tieloche, Tieloche, Tieloche. Amazing. And again, Gangansi, Kot Atsi, Tieloche, Tieloche, Tieloche. Gangansi, Kot Atsi, Tieloche, 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 Prachtig. So that song then would be sung in a cycle, and it's something that you would find right across, this part of the world. And now to the prayer. Gangan si abotse, ne tsukhuk aatsko, kuidat ayes aroma, netses onga, saudare, atua atamat kamske kekengans. Gangan si abotse, ne tsukhuk aatsko, kuidat ayes aroma, netses onga, saudare, atua atamat kamske kekengans. It's important just to mention that the language that I'm speaking to has been eviscerated from the soil due to colonial imposition. And this is a language that is returning back to the Western Cape and returning back to the descendant community of the San and Khoi that have also been relegated under certain identity confines of the term so-called colored, which we might speak about a little bit later. But it is also a language that was forbidden and banned, and one of the things that the colonial authorities did in terms of the forbidding of the language was to remove the front teeth of people who spoke the language. So it was a visceral form of mutilation in terms of the removal of the front teeth. And I think it's important in a way for us to kind of acknowledge that this language of the soil is also a language of return as it's coming in, and I'd invite everybody for the 3 days that you are here to click together, because it is through the clicking that we become whole, and hopefully, we'll express this conviction of the return of our mother tongue to the soil as part of the return of our collective dignity. Aisakuri Kekingas.
Thank you. And he will be joining us on stage later, but he's convener of Save Our Sacred Lands and also High Commissioner of the Gorin Haikona, Hoi, Traditional Indigenous Council. So he'll come back on stage. He has a different role. Okay, now that we have blessings from the land, let's get blessings from the conveners of this segment. And I now welcome Dr. Henry Roman, Director for Southern Africa at the International Water Management Institute, on stage. Welcome, Henry.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cape Town. I'm going to take the cheat code that we use in South Africa and say all protocols are observed. And also just to say how privileged we are to have our event blessed in a traditional way this morning as well. Thank you. So, the International Water Management Institute, as a center of the CGIAR, and the one that has water in its name, has been working in water and agriculture in Southern Africa for around 25 years already. So we have quite a presence in the region. We're based in Pretoria, or our head office is there. The headquarters is in Sri Lanka. And as a research and development institute, like the other CGIAR centers, we work with governments, we work with civil society, private sector to solve critical water problems in developing countries, as well as to scale those interventions that work. As we know, water is life, and in our view, it's the golden thread that connects everything on the planet. Economic development is dependent on water security, and this has been recognized by the AU as well, the African Union, in developing the next 20 years of water strategy for the continent. In the region we are in now, we recently experienced the devastating droughts caused by El Nino, with 5 countries declaring national disasters. And not too long ago, the city of Cape Town itself came close to what they had termed at the time day zero. Now, I mention this not because of that event, but because of what happened during the event, which is the communities that live here came together, worked together to mitigate what is the ultimate equalizer, lack of water. Water does not care who you are, what status you may think you have. It equalizes all of us. And the communities here self-regulated themselves to ensure that everyone had sufficient water during that time. And by doing so, day zero did not occur. It was globally recognized that a city could reduce its water consumption, I think, by more than 30% in 6 months, something the world had not seen. So we know what to do, how to do it. Our discipline has to come through and ensure we keep doing it in times of plenty, not just times of little. IMI also recognizes the importance of gender equality and social inclusion to water, land, and food systems, which are all interconnected. We see water as the pivot to build thriving communities, and it can enhance gender equality and social inclusion at the same time. So the commitment from IMI to Jesse, as we term it, is evidence in our strategy as an organization where we're using it as a transformational lever to attain water and food security. And in order to put that lever into practice, we have an internal Jesse strategy and working group to action that intent. And the IMI booth in the exhibition hall can provide you more information on that as well. So lastly, I just once again want to welcome everyone to the mother city, being Cape Town, and encourage you all to enjoy what it has to offer, but please only after we complete the three days. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry, and for speaking to the water aspect of agri-food systems. We'll hear more from Henry. Next on stage, yes, Dr. Nicolene Dehaan, who is Director, CGI Gender Equality and Inclusion Accelerator. Your remarks, please.
Wow, it's always intimidating to stand up here and to see all these faces, these anxious faces, for a wonderful 3 days. So I have, Vivian always jokes with me because I always have lists of 3. So I have 2 lists of 3 and a longer list. So I'm going to walk you through them, okay? So my first list of 3 is thank yous. I first want to thank everybody in this room for taking the time to be here. We all know everybody's busy. It's a busy time of the year, but we do appreciate that you've decided and prioritized coming here. So thanks again for doing that, everyone in the room. Okay, that's my first one. My second thank you is to IMI. I do have to say thank you to Henry and his team. It was, yeah, I think they do deserve a clap. It was at the end of our India conference when I asked from all the CGR centers, and if anybody knows, most people hopefully do know, but we have 12 centers in the CGIAR, and we try to, go across the world every 2 years to have this conference, to give you guys this space to actually have these conversations. And so at the end of that meeting, and I'm looking at her, Karen Nortje, who is the gender research coordinator for IMI, said, yeah, we'll do it. And then Henry said, yeah, we'll do it. And that's why we're here. And then Karen Gunter and her team came on board, and so that's why we're here. And so I want to thank them for being willing to host us as a big group. And then last but not least, I do want to thank the National Department of Agriculture from South Africa, who has believed in the CGR for the 25 years, and that's why we can be here. And also the Western Cape, because they are the ones that are actually supporting us in this conference at this moment. One of the other principles we always have when we have these conferences, we do try to get a local host. In India, it was the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, because we want to build relationships. We want to build relationships in countries. We want your research that you're going to present, your conversations, to also be part of the conversation of what happens in the country. So again, thanks to Western Cape and the National Department of Agriculture. Appreciate it. So that's my first three, okay? Now my next three. Okay, so as was mentioned, we ended up in India, G20 shows up. We end up here, G20 shows up. It's not the other way around, of course. It's, they show up because we're here. So we are wondering, where are we going to have it next? Because that will determine where the G20 goes. So I was thinking, well, if the G20 is here, their tagline has 3 concepts. And I hope we can also use those 3 concepts. The first concept, and I think this is where also gender equality fits in and where this group will, benefit from it. The first concept is solidarity. And I like that one. I like that because one of the reasons I also thanked you to coming here at this time is we know there's a backlash against gender at the moment. And so that's why there were conversations whether we would even have this conference, where we're like, no, we need to maintain that space. We need to give everybody that space to have that conversation. And that's again where I would talk about that solidarity. Because solidarity signifies a unified effort and mutual support towards creating a more equal and just world. That's what we're here for. This principle emphasizes cooperation, empathy, and collective action, ensuring that no one is left behind. And I think that's what we're all in this room for that solidarity to show we can do it. The other one, of course, is equality. And of course, if you're not in this room for equality, then you might be in the wrong room. But that, of course, refers to ensuring fair treatment, opportunities, and advancement for all individuals, irrespective of their economic status, gender, race, geographic location, and other characteristics. It underscores the need to address systematic disparities and promote social justice on a global scale. Again, that's why we're here. And then the last, because remember I do 3, the third one is basically sustainability, which we're also here for. So to make sure meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So I thought that resonated quite nicely with what we're doing. So I'm glad the G20 also agreed that we're doing solidarity, equality, and sustainability. So, but what does that mean with this conference? And this is where I come to my last list. So what does this conference and what do we in this room bring to this conversation? And again, it's a longer list, but I took that as a good thing. First and foremost, I think this is what we bring in this conference and what you bring in this conference is a space in which we can have these discussions. I think that's so vital as where we can be unapologetically ourselves. I think we need that space as gender researchers and people working in the gender space. So I think that's very important. Where young researchers can present their work and where we can actually set up collaborations to find those innovations and solutions. Again, we are a research conference, and our scientific committee did a wonderful job in figuring that out, but it's not only the research, it's also our partners who will inform our research and will use our research and collaborate and co-create and all those wonderful things that will happen in that room and in all those rooms beyond us. So presenting the research is another one. Collaboration is another one on my list so that we can actually find those solutions. And very important to me, finding solutions. One of the things I learned out of the India conference was that we've done a lot of analysis, but now let's move to solutions. We can't wait. There's an urgency. We need to do that. And why I also say solutions is because next year will be the International Year of Women Farmer. So we have a whole year to show the world we have solutions and change the world. So I do call on everybody in this room to help us find those solutions, that we don't just talk about gender equality, but actually move to changing the world that is more just and fair. So I do hope this all gives us a sense of solidarity and urgency, so that we signal to the world that is this unified effort of mutual support for creating an agri-food system where women can thrive and when gender equality is normal. I'm definitely looking forward to spending the next 3 days with you, having wonderful conversations about research, science, collaboration, and most of all, about being unapologetically ourselves in this room. So thanks again.
Great. Thank you, Nicolene, for the warm remarks and also helping us to set this discussion, set the context for this discussion. Next on, we are going to hear from our co-organizers. Here, I'm going to invite Dr. Mohale Sebopetsa, who is the HOD, Department of Agriculture, Western Cape Government. He is going to be represented by Ms. Bongiswa Matoti, who is the Director, Agricultural Economic Services. Ms. Bongiswa, are you in the room? Yes, please. Welcome on stage. Yes, let's encourage her. You can just take the seat for a minute. Yes. I'll also invite Mr. Desigen Naidu, who is the board member, CGIAR Integrated Partnership Board. Mr. Desigen, are you in the room? I saw you. Okay. And finally, we will also hear from Dr. Ismahane Lufi, who is the EMD of the CGIAR. So these are the three co-organizers, co-hosts, who are going to give us their key remarks for this segment. So Ms. Bongiswa, you're welcome on stage.
All right, it's usually the case that I must adjust the mic a little bit, right? Good morning. Okay, I just wanted to check if we're actually all in here. Formally, is good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, partners, and friends. And I think I can say friends across the world, because I saw your Mentimeter. We are actually coming from all corners, actually, of the world. And also to be safe, maybe I must say all protocol observed. It is a great honor to welcome you all to 2025 Gender Conference here in Cape Town, the mother city, which is a city that embodies diversity, innovation, and resilience. On behalf of the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, especially HOD Dr. Mohale Sebopetsa, whom I'm representing here today, I would like to extend a warm welcome to every delegate joining us across South Africa, across the continent, and across the world. This year's theme, accelerating equality in food, land, and water systems, could not be more relevant. Across the globe, and certainly here in the Western Cape, food systems are under growing pressure. Climate change, water scarcity, and shifting market dynamics are reshaping how we produce, how we distribute, how we consume food. But the truth is that no transformation will succeed if half of the humanity is left behind. In the Western Cape, women are the heartbeat of our agricultural economy. From agri-workers on fruit farms in the Cape Winelands to small-scale farmers in the Central Karoo, to entrepreneurs that are adding value to our local produce, women are shaping the province's food future. Yet, despite all this contribution, many women still face barriers to land, ownership, the finance, training, and access to markets, just among others. These gaps limit not only women's progress, but also the economic and social potential of our entire agri-food system. As the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, we recognize that achieving gender equality is not a side program. It is central to economic inclusion, food security, and also rural development. Our province knows firsthand what it means to face environmental stress. The speaker that was actually before me spoke about day zero, which we all experienced. But we saw women being at the center actually of all the solutions in making sure that we are actually surviving as a province. We saw the role of women again during COVID-19, when some actually of the communities did not actually have got access to food, but we saw women working the land and making sure that they provide for their communities. Today, as we work toward climate smart and sustainable agriculture, we continue to draw lessons from that experience. We know that equitable access to land and water is the foundation of resilience. That is why the department is committed to ensuring that women and youth are active participants in decision-making over these vital resources. That is, we're actually having them from irrigation boards, as you know, they actually also do other land care programs, and in almost actually every platform where we think actually women will actually make a critical role. We are also proud that the Western Cape Department of Agriculture continues to invest in programs that support women in agriculture. Through initiatives such as Women Entrepreneur Awards, we celebrate women who are not just producers, but innovators, women who build agribusinesses, women that are actually creating jobs and contribute to local economies. Through training and mentorship programs that are run by our Elsenburg Agricultural College, we equip young women with technical and entrepreneurial skills that are needed to thrive in agricultural economy. And through our commodity partnerships, the agro-processing initiatives that our department actually has, we help women to participate more equitably in value chains, that is from farm gate to export markets. These interventions are not only empowering women, they are strengthening communities and advancing the province's broader development goals. Agriculture is evolving rapidly, but by digitalization, green innovation, and sustainability imperatives. The challenge before us is to ensure that women and young people are not just participants, but they are actually leaders in this transformation. As a department, we're actively exploring opportunities for women in agri-tech, water-efficient production systems, and climate adaptation research. By integrating gender-responsive planning into our economic strategies, we ensure that innovation benefits everyone, not just a few. None of this work can be done alone, colleagues. Advancing gender equality is not food. Advancing gender equality in food, land, and water systems requires partnerships. Then between government, academia, civil society, and private sector, those partnerships are key. This conference is precisely such a platform, a space where ideas, evidence, lived experiences come together to inform better policy and practice. Over the next few days, you will discuss what works, what doesn't work, and what more that needs to be done to ensure that equality is embedded in every link actually of our food system. That is from soil to shelf. Let us use this opportunity to move beyond dialogue and towards shared, measurable actions. Let us commit to using data, gender disaggregated and evidence-based, to guide our investment and actually be able to track progress. As we open this year's gender conference, I invite all of you to reflect on one simple idea. That is, when women thrive, agriculture thrives. If we accelerate equality in our food, land, and water systems, we will not only advance social justice, we will strengthen food security, unlock innovation, and build the resilience of our communities. Therefore, on behalf of the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, I would like to thank organizers, the partners, and each and every one of you for your dedication to this cause. May this conference be a catalyst for bold thinking, inclusive partnership, and also tangible progress. I thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Bongiswa, for reminding us why we are here and also sharing the approach of the department in terms of accelerating equality in gender food, accelerating equality in food, land, and water systems. Well, she actually is accompanied by a delegation from the department. Are we here? They're here. Are they shy? And you will be enjoying their hospitality this evening for the welcome cocktail. So she did mention that they have a winery, so whatever you'll be enjoying comes from their winery. Yeah. Great. Let's move on. Yes, they deserve a good appreciation. Desigan, you're on for the next 5 minutes or less. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I should say good morning, ladies, and some other people. I did notice that the men in the audience are safely clustered together in little pockets. That's good to see. That's the right balance. I'm very happy to address you today. But let me start at this point. You've heard the phrase Mother City 3 times already this morning. Let me offer you an admission. For most of my life growing up in apartheid South Africa, it's a term I disliked vehemently. Because in apartheid South Africa, that phrase had a narrative. It was an Afrikaner narrative. That this was the mother city because Jan van Riebeeck and his colonizer friends landed here and began the white story of South Africa. But everyone has a transformation, and I've had that too. So I was very pleased, Tariq, when you reminded us that the real reason why this is the mother city, because this is where the indigenous people of South Africa were, the Khoi and the San people. So indeed, I too embrace it as the mother city. Thank you. Colleagues, we are in a very difficult time in the world. We know this. But the thing that the South African story should tell you is that sometimes it takes us getting to the most difficult space, as this country was in the 1980s, on the brink of a civil war, in order for big changes to happen. So when we look at the global landscape, a global landscape that's defined by a polycrisis, a global landscape that says that core parts of that polycrisis is the climate challenge that we're in, and in particular, the fight against climate action in the world, which is bizarre. We are a world that's at economic war currently, with the tariffs in particular. We are a world in conventional war at the moment in a way that's a little bit different from what it was before, because the divides are very sharp. We are watching, for the first time in our history, a genocide being live streamed. It's hectic. But more than that, what we are seeing, after we thought we were over this hump, is an active global fight against equality, against inclusion. And the most bizarre, perhaps, is against diversity. That we are being forced to acknowledge that there is a pathway that will result in the superiority of one race of people and one gender of people in the world. This, if you like, represents the problematique that we have to engage. And against this backdrop, we have to use the toolboxes that we have available to us to, in fact, remind us that Beijing 1995 wasn't a peak, it was a baseline from which to build going forward, and use the instrumentation that we have at our disposal to achieve that. Henry spoke about water being such an instrument. Warms the cockles of my heart. I am a water guy at heart. And it is true. But more broadly, agriculture may be that instrument that gets us over the edge. And we must be really clear that as difficult as the times are with this combination of those four horses of the apocalypse that I've pointed out to you, this is the time to invest in knowledge. This is the time to invest in innovation. This is the time to be entrepreneurial. This is the time to be courageous. So in spite of the fact that there are some big cudgels threatening the CGIAR around funding, unless you can dissuade the people away from that you have to exclude inclusion, that you have to exclude diversity, and you have to exclude equality from your agenda, the CGIAR is being brave because that is the right thing to be at this point. And the instrumentation that it has available is the instrument of knowledge. It's the instrument of empowering people, recognizing, as Amartya Sen reminded us, that empowering women is not just a gender issue, it is a development issue. And that's the crux of what we want to engage. We're also clear that this RDI effort isn't just technological and scientific. It goes way beyond that we need innovation in the social space. We need innovation in the governance space. And we need to organize the catalyzing of the restructuring of our societies so that equality becomes a banner that represents what we have achieved, as opposed to still being a flag that we are trying to get to. And this is our collective task. So the investments that the CG has made in this special science program that goes right across all of the centers in order to promote the gender inclusion, the equality work, as a core instrument of the transformation of agriculture and the transformation of the broader agricultural chains and eventually economies and societies, we think is the right investment. And what you are representing here today is the front line, the vanguard, the beachhead to make all of that happen. I'm getting some gender intimidation behind me. The last thing I want to leave you with is that the multiple fora that we have to engage have the same challenge that we have around constructing and promoting a narrative in the wake of severe resistance, as South Africa will do in a month from now at the G20. The G20, that is a G20 in South Africa, yes, but it's Africa's G20. And we need to put our work together in order to push that over the line. Push it over the line in the G20, push it over the line in COP30 of the UNFCCC, and get this back on the developmental agenda of the world. Good luck in your deliberations this week. We look forward to both the outcomes as well as the great initiatives you're going to commit yourself into going forward. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't intimidating him. I'm just trying to get us to the cocktail faster in the evening. That's the motivation. Anyway, yeah, welcoming us to the mother city made me remember the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy. And that cock bottle. Yeah. Anyway, so again at that point, let me thank Ms. Bongiswa and Desigen for giving us the key remarks as we continue with this segment. I will now allow them to leave the stage as we bring on Ismahan Elofi, who is our EMD at the CGIAR. Desigen and Bongiswa, thank you very much. Yes. So now we are going to listen to Dr. Ismahan Elofi. Do we have the video on? Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. Your Excellency CFS Chair Ambassador Nozifo Noska Jean-Jezir, Head of Department for Agriculture Dr. Mogali Sebopetsa, Director Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities Mikateko Joyce, President of HIFAR Surita Sandoshar, and all our esteemed speakers and distinguished guests. I would like to welcome everyone to the 2025 CGR Gender Conference, a pivotal gathering at the crossroads of gender equality and sustainable development. Building on this year's theme, Accelerating Equality in Food, Land, and Water Systems, we aim to highlight and address the urgent need to close gender gaps in food, land, and water systems. Progress is lagging. Women remain 27% more likely than men to face food insecurity worldwide. In 2025, 150 million more women than men were food insecure, a gap 8 times larger than in 2018. We must change this. CGR 2030 research portfolio provides solutions that target the root cause of inequality and enhance food and nutrition security along with livelihoods. But research alone is not enough. Transformation requires deliberate collaboration, precisely what this gender conference seeks to facilitate. First, we must mobilize greater investment and resources for women and young farmers. Governments, funders, and the private sector must allocate and maintain support for inclusive finance, digital innovations, and bundled services. These are the resources that enable women and youth entrepreneurs to succeed. Second, we need to work together across all sectors, linking researchers, government, civil society, private sector, and national agricultural research partners. Most importantly, we must include farmers themselves, especially women and youth. Third, we need to listen to the voices of women and young farmers, engaging them right from the start in developing gender-responsive technologies, programs tailored to their needs, and policies that protect their rights and their livelihoods. Fourth, we must harness the power of data, Better data is essential to close the gaps in access to land, finance, technology, and markets. The accelerators in the CGR 2030 research portfolio will help to set and advance such data-driven indicators of success. The timing of this conference is pivotal as we prepare for 2026 International Year of the Woman Farmer, which will highlight women's contribution and the barriers they face. This week, we can provide concrete recommendations that can support innovation and accelerate progress in gender equality and social inclusion. Your Excellency, distinguished speakers, and honored guests, I thank you for your dedication. Let's make this moment a springboard to foster progress in the years ahead. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to our EMD, Ismahan Elofi. We have her blessings here, so Nicolene, our jobs are covered. Anyway, moving on, it's now time for our framing panel. We want to shape the vision and speaking to the theme. You will be hearing a lot about that theme. That's why we are here. Everything revolves around the theme, accelerating equality in food, land, and water systems. So at this point, allow me to bring on stage our panelists, starting with Advocate Mikateko Maluleke, who is DG, Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities. She is right here. Welcome on stage, and take the, is it the second left seat? Yes. Next, we are going to have Mwaka Namukonda. She is Executive Coordinator, Consortium of African Youth on Agriculture and Climate Change. Remember, we are also working. That's fine. Mwaka, you can take the next seat. We also have Nancy Laibuni. Nancy is Advisor and Associate Member, Council of Economic Advisors, Office of the President, Kenya. Welcome. Nicolene Dihan, Director. Nancy, you can leave that seat, and yes, that one. Nicolene Dihan, Director, CGIAR Gender Equality and Inclusion Accelerator. Yes, let's welcome her back on stage. Surita Sandosham, CEO and President, Haifa International. Finally, we have Tariq Jenkins. He was right here before. Convener of Save Our Sacred Lands and High Commissioner of the Gorin Haikona Hoihoin Traditional Indigenous Council. Take the middle one. Yes, we need the men with us and for us. Allow me also to register apologies from Ambassador Nosifo Jenzile. She had to have last-minute surgery, and as you can understand, she had to travel. She had to cancel her travel plans because of that important surgery. So we wish her well. We were also expecting the PS from Malawi, Medrina Mloza Banda. You probably see her in the program, but you may have noticed that Malawi just had their national elections, so they are swearing in the new government. That's the reason they are not here. Okay, great. So let's get this conversation started. I will join you on stage. You do have... Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being on stage with us today. Okay, thank you for being here. And to get us started, let's unpack the theme from the sector or the, from your vantage point, where you work. What does accelerating equality in food, land, and water systems mean to you? And allow me to start with you, Mr. Jenkins. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to contextualize the historicity of the settler colonial project as it imposed itself in the Western Cape, where in 1657, along the embankments of the Liesbeek River, this is where the Dutch East India Company gifted its employees land on either side of the sacred river and weaponized title deeds to justify indigenous land theft. The Liesbeek River then became a frontier zone around how the expansion of the settler colonial project emerged, and that frontier zone prompted the first Khoi-Dutch War in 1659. And the reason why I think it's important to locate this is the relationship between the theft of a river and how the river became a boundary point to dislocate indigenous communities from the river, and the extent to which, within our given history, it's important to identify a tangible place, an epicenter of liberation and resistance, and by placing and returning water as that epicenter, because as dispossession of land happened, the non-access to water happened, and slowly a de-Africanization project occurred through a colonial conquest and evisceration of language, of culture, and the symbiotic relationship that we have with water, land, animals, and the cosmos. So only through the return of water to the self, in the same way only through the return of land to the self, and animals such as the quagga, the bluebuck, the Cape lion that were can-hunted to extinction, which all form part of a very important umbilical understanding of ritual for the San and Khoi. In the same way that one could get a license to kill and can hunt San and Khoi together with your big five, there is a deep connection in terms of the conquest, the extent to which water and land has been disconnected from the indigenous self. And I would encourage everyone who's here, it's beautiful that you're in Cape Town, because this is a place that has been subjected to apartheid spatial planning and colonial architecture, and that still lives on as one of the most divided cities in the world, with the highest aspects of gender-based violence. So do take the opportunity that you're here to basically begin to explore the conditions of a colonial system that does indeed provoke a reality of millions of Africans that are unconvinced that we are African today under the term so-called colored, because of the way identities have been reframed in the same way that the Liesbeek River has been canalized, redirected, put underground, invisibilized. And what happens to her, as any river that flows to the sea, is important to us as indigenous communities, one, in the recognition of genocide, the genocide that has happened to the environment, and the genocide that has particularly happened to the peopling of the relationship that binds us in terms of water, in terms of land, and in terms of our dignity.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Jenkins, for that framing. Sarita, from your perspective as, you know, in the international development space, what does accelerating equality mean to you?
Thank you. So at Heifer International, our mission is to end hunger, poverty while caring for the earth. And the way that we do that is to work with smallholder farmers, mainly women who are the backbone of agriculture in the 19 countries that we're in. And so equality that we're talking about, and to accelerate equality, cannot be an afterthought. It has to be present from the beginning in terms of the work that we're doing with women and youth. And the way that we do this is to make sure that they're essentially decision makers. They're not beneficiaries. And so this power of access and agency accelerates equality to transform food systems. And that is based on practitioner, evidence-based work that we've engaged in for the last 80 years.
Great, indeed, they're not just decision makers, but not just as beneficiaries, but as decision makers. That's Heifer's perspective. Thank you, Sarita. DG Mikateko, From your department as DG, Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, how does that resonate with you?
Thank you. I think from my department, I would like to start from the status quo. We still have communities that don't have access to water now, 30 years after our democracy. During the elections, 2024, there was a lady who said, for 30 years, I don't have access to water. There are communities that live in hunger because they rely on a grant. Yes, it does improve the lives of people, but all of us, let's agree. How much is it? 300 and something. When I go out with one friend, not two friends, I spend 800 to 1,000. So if you give people 300 and something, it's not enough. There are women who stay in shacks. Women don't have access to land. When you look at all those things, with their replicating effects of gender-based violence, rape, all those things because of where they live, and their children are raped because they live in places that are not, conducive. There are fires and all those things. You understand how important it is to accelerate equality. But also, the apartheid government, it was developed. Its two main resources was land. So it used, its main resource was land, but it used two things, mining and agriculture, to make money. Women want to be involved in mining. Women want food security. Women want to be able to start businesses because land can be used as security. So there are many reasons why there's a need to accelerate access to food, land, and water. Women are killed going to fetch water where there's no water. There's a woman who was killed by a crocodile at Nandoni Dam when she was going to do her laundry at the dam. So all those things, they require that we accelerate. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. And indeed, resources are huge. And even as we look at the resources, we're looking at, of course, the water, the land, and you have highlighted that very well. I want to come back to Nancy. From the perspective of the government back in Kenya, how does that look to you? Accelerating equality, what do you want to see as a government? Gender equality, for that matter.
Thank you. As a government, we see, or we hope that government then provides an enabling environment so that we can minimize the structural barriers that are either brought by formal institutions, and by formal institutions I mean laws and policies, or the informal institutions, which is our cultures, our norms. So by providing an enabling environment where youth, women can thrive and have opportunities to explore themselves or to participate in the economy. The second thing is to recognize and embrace the role of collectives as a vehicle to embrace addressing constraints that come about by who we are, and specifically constraints that help us not access or agency or provide agency for us in domains of credit, information, inputs. So as we look at each other, we see how we can collaborate and collect and use our agency as a collective to participate. I would like to give a small example in a minute of how we have been able to achieve that as a government. We introduced a financial inclusion fund in 2022, now it's 3 years old. This fund is on a purely digital platform, and it enables you as a citizen, so long as you have an identity card, to borrow. So we're happy to report 3 years down the line, we have 2 products, an individual credit product, where we have seen that 60% of the borrowers are between 20 and 39 years old. What amount of money are they borrowing? The ticket size is about 920 Kenya shillings. That's about, well, 80 cents or thereabout.
How many dollars?
how many dollars? That's
About 10 or 8.
$10. Yeah, they're about. If you disaggregate by gender, we find that it's 50-50, male and female. Yeah. The second product is called a bridge product. The bridge product, you have to have shown a good repayment history, and you have to have borrowed several times. Now this is where the numbers become interesting. We still have 60% of the age borrowing between 20 years to 39 years. However, in this case, women are 71% and the gentlemen are 29%. So what does that tell us? That we have continued to exclude women. If we provide them an opportunity and a platform to showcase themselves, to be responsible for their decisions and their destinies, they can participate effectively. The ticket size for this bridge loan is about 4,000 Kenya shillings. That translates to how many dollars?
35.
$35. So this is, and these are not monies that, they may seem small monies, but they make the difference between a household having food for that day and being able to pay food, repay and borrow for the next day. And it enables our small holders and our small agro-processors, what we call mama mbogas, the people that do small businesses, be able to get credit without any fear or barrier. You access finances, do your business, repay, and move on. So it is the difference between you having and not having, and it provides us an opportunity to leave nobody behind. Thank you.
Great. Mwaka. Yeah, let's encourage them a bit. It's too quiet in here. Mwaka, Nancy gave us a figure, an age group, about 20 to, I don't know if the 39 are still youth. But tell me, for you, from working with a youth group as a part of the Consortium of African Youth on Climate Change, what does equality mean for young people in food systems?
So for us, really, it's moving from the traditional tokenism of saying, oh, we had this number of youths in the room, and actually having the youths fully involved in the whole chain. If we are actually going to accelerate and fully change the system, we should fully give responsibilities and actionable TORs to the youths in different positions for them to actually be the ones to initiate the plans that are being made in rooms, you know. So for me, it's breaking the cycle of exclusion. For us, the youths, it's now actually having policies that fully understand to say, okay, how do we have the youth fully included to have land, to have access to water? How do they actively participate in these spaces? If they are not equipped, how do we actually give them the capacity that they need so that they are mentored right in time for them to fully engage? So it is breaking the cycle, and it is actually having them to start from the ground, not waiting until we have retired for us to get land. No, we need to be taught in good time to say, you guys are the owners of this land, you are the owners of the water. How do we make a cycle that is adaptable? How do we sustain our environment? So it needs us and the system, the governments, all the players being able to educate the younger generation from the ground going up. It should become a culture to understand how the cycle is working so that even in the next 50 years, we will be still having a planet that is sustained. So that's what we see from our side. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now, Nicolene, with your research contact lenses. Can you wrap it up for us and let us know what it means?
See, when you know each other well enough, you know that I wear contact lenses, and that's why she uses the concept. But I segue into what I'm going to say is about knowledge. I think us as researchers, our role is to produce the knowledge that allows us to measure things, the knowledge that allows us to stop spirals of things happening constantly. Can we use that knowledge to stop what Marco was just talking about, that we do get the land into the hands of people who need it, can we use knowledge as a way to build better partnerships? The more and more I see in the world, the more less and less we use knowledge. We all have opinions these days, but there's limited knowledge, and I think that's what's going to hurt us. But what we can do is use the knowledge to actually make sustainable change, real change, because we know what we're talking about. So I think that's why it's so important to have forums like this, so that we don't just keep talking about the same thing and having the same opinions, but actually move more on an evidence base and on a knowledge base as we move forward. And knowledge of different kinds as well, not just dominant knowledges, but a diversity of knowledges, and giving voice to those as well, I think is so important as we move forward.
Great, thank you. So you have had evidence. We've had some of the panelists mention having women being decision makers. Some of them have highlighted access to resources such as water and land. But there must be some structural and social barriers that still limit us from being able to accelerate gender equality in food systems. And this is what we want to hear about at this point. So allow me to come back to DG, to my left, to speak to us about some of these social and structural barriers that limit women's youth and indigenous persons' participation in food systems. And while you list the barriers, perhaps there are strategies that we could apply to break those barriers. Over to you.
Thank you. I think I agree with what she just said about involving young persons from when they are young. Because yes, it's known that most women work in farms, but they work for other people. So those women that are at home that don't have access to food, they should be farming to work for themselves. And most of the time they can't farm. Either they don't know or they don't have land. There are many challenges that they have. But also it's true that we need to educate people how to farm. I met with Agri-SETA, not Agri-SETA, Agri-SA at some point, and the chairperson said to me, actually most South Africans have cattle, but their cattle are not fit to be sold or to be exported and all those things. What does it mean? Access to education. They are not taught people how to be able to grow your whether cattle or whatever, in a way that they can be exported. So access to education is one of the barriers. Access to funds is one of the barriers. Access to land is one of the barriers. But for women also, when women are raised from young women, you can't do this, you can't go to the farms, it's taboo, you know, all those taboos. Now we might think they no longer exist, but when you go to the rural areas, you find that they exist. It's important for us to educate communities in order for them to be able to understand the Constitution. We talk about one of the celebrated constitution in the world, the South African Constitution, but majority of South Africans don't even understand it. So I think educating communities to be able to understand issues of equality, the fact that equality doesn't mean that men are reduced from being men, but they remain men, but they can't. Yes, because sometimes equality, you find men opposing it because they think when you say women are equal to them, it means they are no longer men or their status is reduced. So all those things, understanding, but also I think in South Africa, the family structure has collapsed. So the family can't even work together in order to be able to farm and produce food for themselves. So there are many things. So as a country, yes, you said I must also say, how can we address it? I think the first thing is education, education, access to land, access to water. There are people who do want to farm, but they don't have water. But also educate people to plant things that don't need water. For example, soya beans and other things. Soya bean, I know I don't have time. Soya bean is critical. Soya bean is required to produce diesel, to produce whiskey, to do many things that if people can produce soya bean, they can be able to have resources, money, and all those things. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes. Jenkins, for the indigenous persons, what are these barriers for them? How do we get to them? How do we have researchers here, perhaps there are even research areas.
I'll speak about my understanding of traditional indigeneity in this country. One of the major challenges that we face is the extent to which indigenous communities need a radical push insofar as, especially within communities that are historically matriarchal, to embrace a rematriation of not just the self, but also the extent to which the rematriation process has been, and for the researchers, epistemically and deliberately erased in terms of how we define indigenous communities in this country. And I'll give an example. When we take a look at how traditional communities now have inherited a structure from the Bantustan system under apartheid, where the apartheid government had a very deliberate and certain way of determining who leadership was, and how land was being distributed to mostly men who were prepared to either sell out their communities or to commodify African pain in order to gauge some kind of advantageous position with an apartheid authority. That system was then in turn inherited from a colonial system that was also smashing the indigenous identity of how not just leadership hierarchy was working, but also in terms of its access to land, resources, and the ability to confine these hegemonic governances to a parallel system where co-opted individuals would then take massive decisions in the form of mostly male councils on behalf of entire communities with regards mineral resources, land, later agricultural, and access to the rivers. So what is required now, and I think again being in Cape Town is a very beautiful way of us to understand how we are living in a city that is built by indigenous communities who do not speak those indigenous languages, and the extent to which when we talk about these particular questions on gender disparities and inequities, it is also the extent to which governments and commercial entities are all too happy to just accept entities that want to legitimate themselves to talk on behalf of communities, but it's all out of commercial, capitalist, extractive convenience, where the concern of legitimacy is not necessarily anchored on human rights, but it's anchored on what kind of entity can be able to indigenous wash inappropriate developments, extractive establishments of corporations, whether it's on land, whether it's in terms of our sea, and how the extent to which natural riverine systems and the entire agricultural sector is compromised in this particular kind of way. So I'm just providing a possible decolonial framework around which the issues of gender inequity are closely correlated to the issue of how indigenous bodies in general have been relegated and still remain relegated in a city that you're in. So take the opportunity in that sense to look at what are the structural fault lines around accessibilities.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna say, it looks like it's an issue that the barriers are arising mostly because of the structures that were set initially, right? But we'll come back to you to weigh in further, if time allows. Mwaka, I saw you nodding as Jenkins was talking. So perhaps you have, just in 1 minute or so, some of these barriers for young people, before we move on to the next question. What are these barriers that limit young people's participation in agri-food systems?
So just like my previous leaders have just shared, it's a threefold story. It's a threefold problem. It's finance, it's land tenure insecurities, it's the capacity, but also they have touched on something very important, which is actually our culture. Cultures and systems that have been inherent before, I feel, I'm sure even research shows, once you matured long time ago, before we got colonized and so on, we had some gifts that our parents would give us, a piece of land and so on, before, as a man goes into a certain sort of age, women are also gifted something in that order. But things have changed, territories, boundaries, countries, and the way the colonialists kind of divided us has also rubbed off on us with land tenure and so on. So I feel it is us as the youths not having the capacity to maybe understand how we can actually take care or get this land, one. And then two, it's the financial part as well, to say, how do I actually access this land? Three, I will leave out the financial part because when you come to Zambia, for example, in my country, we do have some policies that allow the youths to access this land, but people do not know about that. So it's the know-how as well.
Education as
yes,
well.
it's
Capacity
gatekeeping as well. Even though it's written in paper, in policies, no one wants to tell us to say it is actually there. So it is a knowledge sort of thing. If you do not read, you will not know about the things that are there for you. So it's a whole threefold problem. Thank you.
Okay, great. And that is actually one of the themes of this conference. So breaking barriers and shifting norms. So once you go into the parallel sessions, I'm sure that participants will get to learn more about that area. Let's move on to how we move evidence into action. And here we have Nicolene. How do we better use... So Rita wants to start. Okay. How do we better use research evidence and grassroots insights to shape policies and also to come up with investments that are not just gender neutral, but they are explicitly gender responsive and youth inclusive?
I think, again, by figuring out what we need to understand better and what are some of those. We've done a lot of work in the Gender Accelerator on looking at evidence gaps. So what are some of those gaps that we need to fill? Because we also appreciate that, especially gender in agriculture research is actually relatively young science. So one of the things we have been able to do, for instance, is make women farmers visible, which wasn't before. So I think having those very clear areas, one of these other areas that we're really clearly working on is understanding that we do have to have gender transformative approaches, that just working with a woman is not going to change everything. And this goes back to some of those norms you were talking about. We understand now that norms are important for us to actually, again, break that cycle, change the world. So I think having those. Now, how do you actually bring that to scale is often very complicated, and it's one of our dilemmas always, because we often talk about we have to go to scale with everything, but on the other hand, we also understand that gender is often very cultural, very local, very contextual. So how do we work with that? And so that's where you guys, as researchers in this room, also come in to help us figure those type of things out.
Great. A round of applause for Nicolene, by the way, and the previous speakers in the other question. Surita, the amount of information that HEIFA is gathering, as you're carrying out the various interventions on the ground, how do we use that evidence? How do we use those insights that you have collected to shape these policies and also better investments?
So one way that we do that is the way that we partner with all of our CGIAR centers, right? Give them a round of applause. I'm here because I've been invited by Nicolene, and I think it's really important to recognize that we ultimately are catalysts. We are practitioners. We're working with our youth and our women, and that provides the evidence base that then goes into the research. And we're always constantly learning, and I think that that's really important. And one of the things that we have done, because we've talked about various barriers that women and youth face, I've talked about women being empowered, but also youth, right? Seeing them as powerful innovators. And we've got this program that focuses on agriculture, youth, and technology. And the way that we do this is we provide catalytic funding to essentially create support for innovations that are coming out of youth, who are really coming out of the farming communities. They're using apps, they're using drones, they're thinking about precision farming. And if we can provide evidence of how that works across the countries that we're in, that supports youth to have a powerful voice into being the dividend that they should be seen, not only in this continent, but around the world.
I need a round of applause.
Go ahead, yes, yes. Precision farming, and in many other forums, youth have always said they're also in need for the money. They're just not, they also want to make a living out of food systems. So we need to help them get there. Nancy, looking at the Kenyan government's policies, same question, but just looking at how the insights on the ground, what's going on, what's going on with communities, with women, young people on the ground in terms of food systems. The evidence they are generating, does it go in any way towards shaping the policies that you come up with?
Thank you. I think the discussion around shaping policy and ensuring that evidence informs policy at government level has a lot to do with how we engage and how we continue to participate, even as researchers, even as different practitioners at the different points or nodes in the value chain that we are representing. For us, we have enacted by law, similar to what Zambia is saying. We have a public participation law that requires every regulation, every policy has to go through the process of public participation. This public participation requires that you have the different actors, both youth, women, the different multi-state agencies, the development partners, and you have to have forums with them and produce evidence that you discussed with them. That is one point at which we attempt to ensure that the evidence then informs policy. But many times, even as researchers, we need to also consider how we message our outputs, our research outputs. We need to think and see ways in which, when we have impacts, we provide scenarios to the policymakers so that they know if we don't take this action, this will be the consequence. That would resonate much easier with them and will help them even as they make the decisions and towards the policies that are enacted. So I think it's a dynamic process. We have avenues for public participation. We must engage. And I think we should not tire to continue to advocate for what we know is right and what needs to be provided for. Thank you.
Thank you. I do like your point on communication. Means we still have a job. Communicators in the room. Anyway, I'll come back to DG Mikateko. We are still on the policy question. We do have local policies, we have global policies. If we had the ambassador here, she would have spoken to us about CFS. Well, she isn't, but we'll still get her input later on. But from your G20 vantage point, the global commitments that we bring together for you, perhaps under the G20 umbrella this year, how can those global commitments accelerate gender equality at national level? How do we ensure that they actually benefit the people that we are formulating these frameworks and policies for?
Thank you very much. I think with our working group Empowerment of Women Working Group. The approach has been, we want to make sure that all South Africans know about the G20, because we take it for granted that they know because they see it on TV, but not everyone knows about that. But also our themes, we chose 3 themes. We chose care work, paid and unpaid care work, because it's one of the areas that impacts on women, not even just women, from girls and women, not to be able to participate in economic activities, because some of them have to look after their sick families, they can't even go to school because of some of those responsibilities. The second one is financial inclusion of and for women. That one, it has assisted us to be able to bring the banks into the table. We even had your trade fairs and whatever, where we brought banks and said to them, talk to women. Why, when they come to apply for loans in the banks, they don't get it? So they had to tell them that if you apply, this is what you want to do, you know, all those things. So we believe that it has empowered women. The third one is gender-based violence. So we're looking at positive masculinity. How do men get involved in order to address gender-based violence? Because it is men. I'm not saying women don't assault men. The research that was done, the national research that was done by HSRC has shown that the women who assault their husbands, but the number is insignificant. So how do we make sure that we involve men? So we believe that the G20 gives an opportunity not just for us to come up with policy, but to learn from other countries, because whatever that we've been doing, we've involved other countries in order to share best practices. Some of the countries, they don't have gender-based violence. Oh, it happens, but it's minimal because they've used technology to monitor. Some of the countries have reduced the impact of the film and video impact. Their video, there's no sex in their video and all those things. So how do we learn from those countries in order to be able to implement it here? I know in South Africa you can't do that because of the constitution. They'll tell you about freedom of expression and all those things, but how do we make sure that we learn from them to reduce gender-based violence, to address issues of economic empowerment, but also to have bilaterals to implement programs that would increase jobs and all those things? Yes.
Great, and your 3, the pillars of the Empowerment of Women Working Group. You did have a conference on financial inclusion of and for women. That was in March?
In May, at Sun City, yes. And then in July, we were focusing on care work, and then now we're focusing on positive masculinity. Okay. So it's a separate, it's technical meeting that focuses on those side events, but then we also have the meetings. Now we'll be having the meeting of the ministers in order to adopt the declaration. But as it was said, that the issue of gender, there's pushback, there's serious pushback.
Yeah, and next year it moves on to, anyway, that's politics.
I don't think the working group on women will sit in the US. It will definitely not sit. It will be adopted by the next coming.
By the next country.
Yes.
President. Okay, good. Nancy, do you want to weigh in on these global commitments? I mean, we have governments in these global processes. We have the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP30, coming up in Belém. And we are going to again talk about, you know, gender and agri-food systems. The conference in India we were talking about, we had climate change as a theme. But anyway, how do we ensure, for instance, that COP30, for instance, those commitments again, that they downscale to women from your policy maker perspective?
Thank you. I think we just need to continue to have or strengthen the governance mechanisms that do exist around the various initiatives that we have globally, because most of them, after the conference, will develop a declaration and an action plan. And it's upon the different governments then to scale down and ensure they domesticate the declaration and the action plan, set actionable targets. And if you go into several countries, not only Kenya, we all have teams around those that are monitoring our SDG goals, are monitoring our commitments that were made in the COP, for instance, 29, now we are going to 30, I think. So at the end of the day, it's just to strengthen systems. As researchers, we should then encourage the knowledge base that will help inform the policymaker on what decisions and action plans they need to take at country level. As the government, the work is to coordinate and ensure that the different actors and sectors keep their commitments towards what they had. And the idea then would be for each government to look at actions that are doable, realistic, that you can measure and monitor. So I think there's not exactly one answer in how we can domesticate, but then it takes upon us, the research community, to play our role and ensure we provide evidence and data that then the policymakers and the coordinators of these action plans and commitments can use to leverage on when they go to the next round of discussions, and even to give them enough evidence to inform their negotiations and to show that, fine, we had committed, for instance, to fund for loss and damage for climate change, as an example, an X amount of money. How have we done, or how much have we achieved? We had committed maybe to indigenous people an X amount of resources. So how do we measure that? How do we show evidence to show that the non-action causes us this X amount of consequences? So how do we need to go forward and reform? So I think it's just strengthening our governance mechanisms and continually looking and reviewing at the targets and action plans that we have made, and supporting each other along the value chain, the different nodes that people play to ensure that targets and commitments are met.
Okay, great. If you were paying attention, I hope you were. We are moving systematically. We are trying to get through the themes, and we have gone through, the panelists have spoken to breaking barriers and shifting norms. We've also moved through a question on evidence into action, how to ensure that we have global to local alignment. And now, as we wrap up this panel, what we want to hear is just about how do we scale this innovation so that we have impact. And what about inclusion and representation, which Jenkins has sort of touched on, but he will just have one final review for that. So I'll come back to Nicolene and Surita just to tell us, in 1 minute, how do we move beyond this pilot, small projects here, small projects there? It's a research project, you get the findings, so you have the findings, and then what? How do we get to the millions or even the billions with the solutions that we have?
So I'm going to start first. I want to build on the point that Nicolene brought up when she talked about solidarity and equality and sustainability. Scale equals sustainability. It doesn't happen unless you partner with governments, community-based organizations, private sector, and local governments. And what we have learned is that if you want to make sure that the women who are our farmers lead thriving, resilient lives in this world that is in crisis, then it is absolutely necessary to work with all of these different partners. And in Heifer, I just learned that we are working in the Sahel, and we're trying to reach something like 96,000 women in the dairy sector, not only in producing, in production and in quality, but job security, and also thinking about youth and thinking about the value chain. Those numbers will not be reached by us alone. It is, in fact, in the strategic partnerships that we will have with all of these different countries, working also with our research partners to ensure that what we're doing will, in fact, lead to impact.
Nicolene, seems you are conferring, or you have a marking scheme. What remains in your marking scheme?
I just want to say, for me, it's unlocking the potential of women. That's how we can scale. It's as simple as that.
Unlocking the potential of women. Very straightforward. I wish we knew how. Oh, is that why we are here? Okay. Let's move it to Jenkins. I did say that we are just at the very last question, and we're looking at scaling and then representation. So, how do we ensure that this indigenous voices, and for you, Mwaka, because you are the ones who will wrap up this panel for us, How do we ensure the indigenous voices and the marginalized youth? And of course, small-scale producers, where we find that most women are, although we want to get them out of that. How do we ensure that they are not just beneficiaries, but they actually help us co-design solutions? In just 1 minute. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. What is indigeneity when the idea of scaling measurement has completely disrupted the idea of custodianship and even ownership? When sustainability in many ways does not anchor ownership, restorative justice, intergenerational trauma, and the extent to which identities have been re-engendered as they have been manifestly re-engineered to the point where indigenous bodies are being deployed and utilized to justify different forms of the commodification of African pain. It requires a deeper assessment of the mechanisms around which we deploy community engagement with historically complicit entities that align with the very framework of coloniality that we are trying to distance ourselves from and become self-determined in terms of the strategies. Before the strategy happens of what meaningful engagement means, the centering of indigenous voices has to start from an inception phase, not in the middle, not at the end as a tick box exercise, but from the inception phase, understanding that it will be messy, understanding that it will not be perfect from the beginning, that it will be painful, but that also that the road is very long and very slow if we want to be sincere in as far as the identification and the centering of loss, of dignity, and especially in our context, what has happened to the essential quality of the symbiotic relationship that indigenous communities have with the land, and especially the San and Khoi, which is matriarchal. And so the rematriation process is not just a process of generating numbers of women who are indigenous people in meetings, but to ensure that that level of tokenization is completely reframed to the point where indigenous communities that are held by women are able to, from the inception phase, as they are representatives of a broader indigenous cohort, begin to relocate, re-legitimize, and action a certain kind of consciousness where, for example, we have a place right now in the world that is much smaller than the city, that is a very powerful example of a settler colonial project that right now has the highest death statistics against women and children. And if you want to look at an amplified lens on what a modern-day settler colonial project is doing and how it impacts on indigenous communities, and in particular indigenous women and children, there you have it, and it's in the Gaza. And I say that as an indigenous person in the sense that our own apartheid spatial planning over here, and in this particular province in particular, and in this city in particular, the indigenous voice is continually being commodified and is continually being hoisted on its own petard in order to basically acquiesce to an industrial complex, an economic industrial complex that has taken indigenous knowledge systems, recontorted it as if to say, we will teach you again of how to heal with the land.
Okay.
And I think that for me would be some considerations around answering that question.
Okay, so you do start, engage them right from the start, right from the beginning, and the issue of tokenism, ticking boxes and all that. So redesign, reframe, relook into that. Thank you very much. And also for I noticed that you wore your other cap. and everyone clapped in the room. Anyway, that's good too, because it is an international conference and we wanted to get as diverse voices as possible so that we diversify or we just get to think broader in terms of the issues that we're dealing with. Mwaka.
Okay, I can see we are
out of time, but
yeah. But to be honest, I actually feel we are looking at it the wrong way. We are here today and able to use everything that we have and the resources because our ancestors did not destroy our land. What I feel we should do is for us to actually integrate our knowledge and our innovations with this new generation. We need to also get the indigenous knowledge of how people lived before and integrate that. If we're able to integrate how food was conserved, how the land was conserved before, how water was conserved before, for us to still be enjoying it today, and understand to say, how do we integrate innovative ideas? Because to be honest, we are the ones destroying the world now. Our innovations, as much as they are scaling up our production, are also harming our cycle. So how do we produce in a good way without destroying our ecosystem? And I feel that is the best way we integrate with our indigenous people. We localize what we have, learn from them, and also share what we have with them. And I feel that's the best way to move. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've also seen with the researchers, at least in the CGIAR, that they go by the mantra that do no harm. Am I right? With your interventions, do no harm. So you are there to benefit the people. So you work with them to find solutions. Okay, with that, Advocate Mikateko Maluleke, Mwaka Namukonda, Nancy Laibuni, Nicolene Dihan, Turita Sandosham, Taurik Jenkins. These were our panelists. Thank you very much. Please appreciate them. Thank you very much. We will have a group photo right here. The rest of you just sit still. We'll have a quick photo, including the ones who did the welcome remarks. Miss Bongiswa, yes. And we had Desi Jen, Henry, please. And Mabongi Thusi, please get ready. You'll have 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay, a round of applause for our panelists. So we are remaining with 3 more sessions, but the first one is with Mabongi. Then we'll move on to a 20-minute youth fireside chat and 10 minutes of explanation of the conference themes, and then we go for lunch. So very brief program. Mabongi Thusi, you're welcome on stage. You okay? Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Sanbona, Molweni, Dumelang, Abshen, Bondia, Moroi, Jambo, Africa, Goeiemorgen. After this beautiful session, maybe before I even fully introduce myself, can you look at the lady sitting next to you right now?